Howdy, sir.
Yellow. What's up?
How are you?
Good.
Scale of 1 to 10. How's been your day?
Pretty. It's a like a 2 or 3.
Okay, I respect that
Yeah.
answer.
I had participated in what's known as I don't know, what kind of people are watching this, basketball fans or whatever. But I participated in what's known as a exploding barbed wire death match last night on pay-per-view for AEW here in Jacksonville, where I'm at right now. About 20 hours ago. So, needless to say, I was not walking around very spry this morning. And
Yeah, yeah,
so it's kind of the day after one of those things is it's kind of a rough day, just kind of
yeah.
chill. We made a quick run to the store to grab some supplies, and that was about it. I just been sitting in a room, just like most of the day. But on the whole, pretty good.
We're gonna
But
try
that's what
to.
you sign up for, so it's all good.
We're gonna
I'm
try
lucky
to.
enough to get paid to do. I am lucky enough to get paid to do what I like to do, what I'd probably do for free anyway for a living. So it's a pretty good day.
Yeah, you really talked yourself around. You started at this is an awful day too. I'm pretty lucky. I'm going to try to not get too far into my own basketball past, but I do have to tell you that I remember that feeling really well of like the day after, especially as I aged into my 30s of like, oh, I don't snap back the way I used to. And the body's not real happy with what I've done to it.
No, that's the worst part is the it's not even so much that you can't do stuff like you used to, or so it's at a certain point, I don't know if whatever you hit, uh, you don't recover as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I used to be able to, wrestle 30 minutes, whatever, 7 nights a week, do whatever, drink a freaking bottle of whiskey, wake up, run 5 miles, do 10,000 push-ups,
Mm-hmm.
train this, that, just at like level 10. And then I never took days off. I'm the type that historically I've always been I always feel like I got to do something. I don't have just a rest day. Like, oh, I got nothing today. Like even on a day where I had nothing, I'd have to be like, oh, well, I got to like go on a run or hit the gym or do something. And all the things I like to do recreationally, be it, training and hiking, mountain biking, those are all physical things too. So I'm like, oh, if I got a day off, I got to go do something with it. So just a day off where you just rest just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really compute with me. But as I started to get older, my body started to revolt on me and break down a little bit. It's like I have to,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have no other choice. Just something that used to be like a train, whether it be a match or a training session or this or that or whatever. It used to be like, oh, I could do that, and then I can go do whatever later, and like it wasn't even a thing. Now it's like, oh, now I'm down for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's the recovery. You don't bounce back as quick after a certain either a certain age or a certain number on the mileage
Right. Right.
counter,
Yeah.
whatever that is. I'm sure that's the same probably for every sport, every endeavor.
I do think it puts you in touch with your own mortality, and that can be depressing. But I will say it gives you this taste of it early and reminds you that you are going to age. Because I know people who don't necessarily have to slow down until they're in their 40s and 50s. Sports do kind of bring that to the fore really quickly, which can actually sort of set you up for this understanding of mortality for the rest of your life.
Yeah, like it's someone who's maybe not a an athlete, who's 35, who is a stockbroker or does a website or something or whatever, they might look to people to be a young man,
Mm-hmm.
but like, and I still feel like I'm like friggin' 22.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still have all the same sensibilities and the same sense of humor and the same behaviors and basically, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like people look at me like I'm old now. because I feel like I carry myself like I'm old because I'm constantly going,
Right.
hobbling
Right.
around and so forth. And
Yeah.
see the way when I see younger people doing young people stuff, and they even use the phrase young people, I'm like, aren't I a young person? Like I thought I was a young person,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still somewhere in the I haven't fully crossed over into like full grumpy old man yet, but it's like it's coming quick,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just kind of leaning into it. I think there's no other choice. I don't
Right.
want to fight it and try to hang out with
With the
these
young
youngsters
folks.
and do
Yeah.
these young things. I'm just leaning into it. I'm just gonna be a crusty old man and get old and here we go. But I probably still got a good hopefully I still got a good bunch of years left in me.
I remember toward the end of my career doing a lot of groaning when I would perform like lifts or jumps and stuff. And a lot of times I didn't even need to do it. It was almost like it just kind of started to come naturally at a certain point.
Yeah, it just becomes a habit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just God. Yeah.
Right. It's like, well, yeah, like you said, you can get away with it, so you can do it. All right. Well, we're gonna dive into some of the changes to your routine and habits in a bit. I want to ask you some really hard hitting stuff before we get to that. First question: Reds or Bengals?
I don't really follow either of them, to be honest with you. I did when I was a kid. I used to love to go to the Reds games. We used to get like $5, they call them red seats because they're
Mm-hmm.
like the absolute top of the top 6 rows or whatever, like the worst tickets in the stadium. But there would be, you could always walk up and get like red seat tickets or whatever. So and then you try to sneak down to the lower seats or whatever, but just play around and walk to the stage. So I used to go to Reds games a bunch as a kid. Like I can remember a bunch of players from like the 90s Reds,
Mm-hmm.
because every kid likes baseball, at least back then. Now they probably don't even care about baseball because they got all these video games and iPads and stuff. See, I'm starting to sound old again. But yeah, I used to love going. It's kind of a magical game. There's something to it. But I don't follow anymore. Really, I couldn't name one player on the Reds, unfortunately. I would love to be like, oh yeah, Red, but I feel like then if they got good,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, yeah, go Bengals, they won a Super Bowl. I feel like I'd be a fair weather fan.
Right. Right.
Like
Okay.
people like I'd be like a poser, like, oh, you weren't with the Bengals when they were 2-14. You
Mm-hmm.
just jumped on it now because you're from Cincinnati. And
Right.
so even if I got into it and my imagination was captured, I could jump on the bandwagon and I could say, yes, I'm from Cincinnati. I'm a Bengals fan. But to be perfectly honest, I haven't followed and I can't name one player from either team. So like, I don't want to be a poser fair weather fan and be like, oh yeah, if they ever got good.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I
I'm gonna
keep it
put
real
you.
like that.
I'm going to put you down for the Reds just because I can tell that you're a Barry Larkin fan at heart.
Yes,
Okay.
Barry Larkin, dude. I went to a Barry Larkin autograph signing when I was a kid at a place called Biggs. I was probably like 10. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, Barry Larkin's gonna be there, sign an autograph. Like I'd never been to a thing like this. There was a big ass line when we got there, and they had like a cutoff,
Mm.
and they wouldn't let me get in line. They're like, no, he can only see like 200 people or whatever. And they were like, I got shunt away, and I was fucking pissed at Barry Larkin for years. But I was like, screw him, man. He wouldn't give me an autograph. This bull, what? But like now I get it. That like, yeah, he probably had 2 hours, and he can
Mm-hmm.
only do so. Like now I've probably been in that situation myself. I'm like, how many people out there are like, oh, screw him, he didn't do it. And it's like you would sit there all day if you could, but like they're shuffling you around, you're on a schedule,
Mm-hmm.
you're like a robot, you're just doing stuff. Now I got no heat with Barry anymore.
we're
One of the
forgiving
greatest shortstops ever play the game.
we're forgiving Barry Larkin on this podcast. That's what we're doing. Okay, so I really, the reason I asked the Reds Bengals was, John, I just wanted to impress you with my research to figure out that you were from Cincinnati, which is sort of a segue into, I want to know legitimately, how did this all start? How did you get into being a professional wrestler?
I actually just kind of was going back, trying to even remember, because I got talked into writing a book, which is a terrible idea because I've
I agree.
never written anything in my life. I have no idea how to write. I was like, I didn't have a desire to write a book. I was like, I don't think, I'm not a former president. I don't need, nobody needs to hear the memoir of my dumbass, like in this
Mm-hmm.
thing that I do. Like there's not a desire for it anywhere. I didn't think it was a pressing need for me to have some kind of book. But then I was like, well, I started thinking about like I like the Willie Nelson books.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got one called like the Tao of Willie. They're short and they're just kind of fun reads. They like it's just kind of some of his philosophies and a few stories, and just kind of you get the sense of what it's like to hang out with Willie Nelson. And it's not any kind of linear story. It's just like kind of hang out with Willie Nelson, no pressure for 200 pages. Like it's a fun read. Like we're not trying to cure cancer here. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I bet I could do something like that because I've been around enough to like I got some stories.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of started like that. Like just okay, I'll do it just like a light collection of stories kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, like so I've been going back thinking about like how the hell did this all start anyway? Like so I was wrestling's all I ever, it's just like it was my thing. Like as long as I can't remember a time before wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say like, oh yeah, I remember this game on the TV and I got obsessed. I just don't remember a time before. There were kids who lived in the apartment underneath us. They had like some wrestling tapes and some wrestling figures, and I got the Ninja Turtles and stuff, but they got these wrestling guys, and then the wrestlers come on the screen because they got the wrestling tapes, like early '90s WWF, and I got the figures, and they're on the screen, and they're really fighting, and I'm like, oh, so like, because I'm like, who are these guys? These like Ninja Turtle bad guys or something? I'm kind of making this up, but I'm kind of assuming this is how it kind of played out in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was playing with they come on the screen in real life, like the action figures in real life. Like there's a tag team called Demolition from like the early '90s, '80s. They got leather masks and face paint, and they're like these heavy metal ghouls. They're cartoon characters, and we got the figures. And I see a lot of guys. I saw the action figures first because the kids that lived underneath me had all these action figures. But then
Mm-hmm.
they come on the screen in real life. I'm like, oh, so I'm like, so it's like the Reds, like
Mm-hmm.
they're an actual sport that's played, and I have the action figure here we're playing with, and so that was kind of my first like introduction into what it is. So then it was just like the thing that I liked, like more so than any other uh superhero or comic or whatever. I just was really into the wrestling stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I got the toys and watched the shows on Saturday morning or whatever, And like we would play wrestling, like kids, where I lived to be like a bunch of kids, really, really kind of like trash apartment complex, where just kind of a place that you go, place where people lived when they didn't have when you couldn't afford any other place to live, kind of place. Like it was like the lowest rent place,
Mm-hmm.
like public housing and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but tons of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like a lot of like, yo, let's play baseball, let's play football, sitting around, kids skateboarding, hanging around in groups, playing hacky sack, whatever, So
Mm-hmm.
always stuff going on. But he's like, oh, let's do wrestling. So it'd be like, we cut like I'm sure we knew or understood on some level that this is a work and this is a performance and there's like a show going on here and they're not really fighting,
Right.
but we don't know enough about it to like try to put on any kind of performance or anything. Because
Mm-hmm.
like you see a lot of backyard wrestling wrestlers when they have like home videos of them doing backyard wrestling, and they're like they have characters and they painted themselves up and they're wearing sunglasses and But like we were too stupid to do that. Like we played like tackle football on concrete, like
Right.
idiots. Like so we just be like, okay, like I'm this guy, or like I'm Bret Hart or I'm the Undertaker. You would assign yourself a wrestler for some reason from TV, and then we'd be like, okay, ring the bell, and then we just beat the hell out of each other and just like have a fist fight and try to pin each other. And then like the ref would count and I'd be like, that wasn't 3, dude. And then you get in like another fight. It's ridiculous. But I was really into wrestling, and then so at some point you're into different stuff.
Mm.
Uh yeah, you go through a Ninja Turtle phase, you go
Right.
through my sister went through a New Kids on the Block phase, you know what I mean? You go through
Sure.
phases. But like wrestling just always was my thing. I know other kids in school wouldn't be into it, but I always would be, but like there'd be nobody I could talk about it with. It was
Mm.
like my weird secret, not like a secret, but there's just nobody else who got it.
Mm.
It was like my thing. And
Right.
over time it started, I don't know how or why, but I was studying. I didn't know how or why at the time, but I was like studying wrestling. Like I was get all the magazines, all the tapes. I'd go to flea markets, scour for tapes. You start tape trading, like in the back of magazines. People will be like, "Oh, I'm on the lookout for this tape from Japan or whatever. I got this tape to trade." You weird ways you acquire old VHS tapes, So I end up with like boxes of VHS tapes from like progressively over the years. Like I'm studying Japanese wrestling and all the different territories, which are like different promotions from different parts of the country, different time periods. I'm like getting like the almanacs with the title histories, and I'm compiling a history in my mind of like I'm like studying it now at like an academic level, and I don't even realize it
Mm.
that it's got to like that level of obsession. And I'm understanding wrestling on like a different level. I don't really know why I'm doing this, but I just am.
Mm.
And back then, like I never had a computer or the internet or anything except like when you'd be in computer lab in school.
Mm.
So, you don't have like an iPhone or anything. So like all I know of wrestling is what I see on TV or I read in the magazines. The magazines are like what we would call kayfabe, meaning like they're not like behind the scenes as much. They
Mm.
give you all the pictures and the highlights and stuff, but they're not like. So I had no idea how to become a wrestler. It's not like you can like go to like you can't take that as a class in school, like early wrestling training in high school. Like you can't do that. That's not a
Right.
thing.
And well, yeah. And as you were talking about it, I was thinking about like when I was a kid going to sign up for Pee Wee baseball or YMCA basketball, the entry is pretty clear, right? But in wrestling, that's completely unclear. So it's like, how do you take that next step to like,
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
doing this with
I
other
had no
people?
idea there was, and it kind of sucks. A bunch of like kids now, like, like 10-year-old kids at like signings have come up to me, be like, "Oh, like, are you ever gonna turn heel?" Meaning, like, if you're not a wrestling fan, it means like a heel is a bad guy, a big face is a good guy,
Mm.
or stuff like that. Like they're using like the insider terms. They totally understand they see it differently than we saw it. We just saw it as like this spectacle. Like when we were kids, I'd be like, we literally have conversations like, "Do you think Undertaker's like that in real life?
Right.
Do you think he like sleeps in a coffin? Like, what is this guy like in real life? Like, we don't know because we just never seen it, or there's no behind the scenes information.
Mm.
Now that's so readily available. I feel like there's a certain magic that is lost that I had as a kid that fans now. Well, wrestling fans are very, very passionate and they want that information because they're so passionate. I
Mm.
almost feel like there's a little bit of magic lost because
Yeah.
I still had the magic up until the point I got into the business. So I
Mm.
didn't know how to get back to your question. Like I didn't know how you became a wrestler. So it wasn't even my goal to become a wrestler because it didn't make any sense. Like that wasn't even like an option. But somewhere like deep in the back of my brain, I kind of knew like that because I'd kind of like been studying this for reasons I don't understand, and I'm You know, like it got to where I was like, well, if anybody was going to be a wrestler or anybody was qualified, it would be me. Cause I know this stuff like the back of my hand. I understand. And I don't even know how I understand it. I just kind of do, just from like watching and absorbing and reading every possible piece of information I can. I understand nuances about the business that fans aren't supposed to understand somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just walking around one day. I see a flyer on a telephone pole for a show, like a small independent show, company called HWA that was like a what's called Red Barn Flea Market. That's like 15 minutes from my house. Like I know where it is. I've bought wrestling tapes from there before. I've been to this flea market. I know where it is. And there's a wrestling show. And I'm like, I don't even know what to expect, but I'm going there. And I'm like, is this like the minor leagues? Like, is this like AAA baseball or like the ECHL? We have like minor league hockey in Cincinnati. Is it like that? Like, I don't even know what I'm expecting to see when I go to the show. And it's an independent wrestling show. And you know, and I'm like 10 feet from the ring, and I'm like, oh, these are like real live wrestlers. And I'm like, and I have so many questions. I'm like, okay, well, this is like, these aren't the guys on TV, but this is real live wrestling happening. You know, like, how do you start? Where do they get these guys from? How much money do they make? How does this all happen? Like, do they make a bunch of money? Like, are they rich? Where do they come from? How do you like what's going on? Right. So in the but like they had a program, you know, like an event program. It's got like ads for like the local pizza shop and like tonight's card and like a rundown and like thank you to our sponsors. And in the back, there's like a Les Thatcher's Main Event Pro Wrestling Camp and a address and a phone number. And I was like, oh, and that was kind of like the oh shit moment of like the fucking lights shone from heaven, and it was like, oh fuck, this is where you go. You go to a, like, if you're gonna be a doctor, you go to medical school. If you're gonna be a wrestler, you go to fucking wrestling school. Like, obviously, I was like, there's a camp or I didn't know what that entailed, what that looked like. I didn't know anything about it, but I was like, that is where I'm going. That was immediately, that was it. That was my life from that point on. I just knew. So I sent an actual physical letter on to this guy Les Thatcher, who was like an old timer who ran the place. He sent me back a letter on like a typewriter, which is by 2003 was probably the last one in existence, I'm sure. And called on the phone, and you know, I was 16, about to turn 17-ish at the time. I was just kind of going through all this, trying to figure out the timeline for the book as I was explaining. And I was just recently kind of reliving this, like, and you had to be 18, but I just went to the place and just showed up, you know, and I'm like, hey, what goes on, you know, and seeing like a training session for the first time, like dudes in the ring with like, you know, their workout gear and knee pads and stuff for the first time. I was like, what? It blew my freaking mind. I was like, what? It was like the first peek behind the curtain of what happens. Because I've been watching this for so many years and been so obsessed with this. I've never seen like how the sausage gets made and like seeing what they do and watching drills and listening to them talk about it. And they're using terms that I don't know yet, but I understand that they're like technical insider terms that I don't know what they mean, but I'm like that excited the hell out of me. Like, oh man, like I'm like, this is it. I'm like, this is where I need to be clear. Like I had this deep down feeling that like I have an aptitude for this and I will be good at this because I know this. Because anybody who knows this is me. And I just had like a feeling, you know. And so it's like it just happened. Just go back to your original question. It all just kind of like happened. Like I didn't find wrestling. Wrestling found me. It's just like the thing. It's the only thing I've ever liked. It's like my thing. It's always been my thing. I can't remember a time before it. And it just kind of like found me, and it's just like it was so obvious. There was no other path, you know. It wasn't like you know, I thought about a career in dentistry, but I decided to give this wrestling a try. No, it was just like, no, I'm a pro wrestler. From the second that I saw the ad in the back of the program, and I was like, let's that's just made of a pro wrestling camp. that was my life
Mm-hmm.
from that moment. There was no like, oh, but if that doesn't work out, I'll try something else. There was nothing else. It was
Mm-hmm.
this is it. Like it was very clear.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always interesting in our lives how when you're open to things seem to happen. So you're talking about walking down the street and seeing this ad on the sign or on the lamppost, right? And in some way you had to be kind of like looking for that on some level, right? Like you have to be open to that because there's a lot of us who are going to walk past an ad for a professional wrestling event and not even see it because we're just like not even thinking about it. So I do think it's interesting how that openness often leads to these amazing paths, right? Just the fact that you were willing to go to the wrestling event and then that's when you found this thing and that kind of led to it all in a way.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw the word wrestling on something, like my eyes went to it immediately. I forgot
Mm-hmm.
I was on video for a minute earlier. Sorry,
No,
but
that's
yeah. So like anything, if I saw those words, my eyes and attention and focus like went. I want to know everything about it. What is it? What's going on
yeah.
here?
It's like it's like when you buy a car or when you're thinking about buying a car and then that's all you see is that car all around the world. That's like when you were 16, you're like all I see is wrestling and so I'm just hooked up to experiencing that.
Yeah, the universe has a funny way of doing. I'm kind of a everything happens for a reason kind of person, because
Mhm.
you find horrible things you think are horrible at the time. Then you look back on years later and you go, well, that set up this, which set up that, which set up that. And I can't imagine this not being how things are.
Mhm.
So I'm glad it all happened the way it did because I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the universe is like that. Like if you the universe will put the flyer there for you. You just gotta be like willing to look at it and willing to have the balls to to go for stuff or look into
Mhm.
stuff you got to take steps.
Right.
Because if you just sit and think and imagine and wonder in your room, in your house, on your phone, on the internet or whatever, like nothing's gonna get done. But I mean, yeah, I guess you could on the internet. Click on the things or answer the email or ask a question or
Mhm.
collaborate or do something or you got to take steps to make stuff happen, and before you know it, all of a sudden things happen.
Mhm.
But you gotta engage with the world.
I wonder in those early days. So like you go to this camp and I won't pretend to know exactly what the next steps were, but I would guess that there must have been a couple of important moments and I wonder about was there a moment where you felt like, "Oh, wow, this is the feeling I was after." Did you ever have that sense? I can remember in my basketball days like it connecting pretty aggressively in a couple of like levels as I went up and that feeling making all of the work and effort worthwhile. Did that happen to you where you just sensed that feeling of like I'm in the flow, the zone, etc.?
Well, it takes a while because it takes a while to get good
Right.
because you will suck uh, for a long time. And at first, very first, it was like, and it mostly runs people off, and it's kind of a thing where they don't want to wait. They don't want to waste their time. They'd love to get your money, but if you're not going to work out and you're not like if this isn't going to be a fit and it's not going to work out for anybody, like we're not going to waste 6 months training you if you're just going to quit. And it's just like, so they try to run you off a little bit at first, like,
Mm,
but it was a very old school camp, where I got to kind of one of the last of its kind that kind of went by the old carny mentality of like, okay, get their money. But like, if they're not super tough and like to be in this business, you got to be, especially, with that old school mentality, it was even tougher back then, when it was more secret and guarded, you really pay your dues to even get like a seat at the table,
mm,
so it was like endless conditioning and just until you just squats and push-ups and running and stuff until you want to throw up, like before you even get a chance to get in the ring, just, and if you quit after 5 minutes, then it's like, okay, well now we don't have to waste our time because you clearly don't want to be here. But like I came from like amateur wrestling, so like I understood hard work, and that like I'm not particularly skilled or gifted athletically in any particular way, and was not put in a position in life in any particular way where where I thought anything good would ever happen. It was just kind of like, oh, like people from where I'm from were like the have-nots. Like we don't actually have good things. None of us have money. We're not destined for that. You'll never have any of that. Wrestling taught me, like from like the first day of like junior high wrestling, it's about hard work, and like this is the toughest sport. Basketball players are pussies. We work harder than everybody. This is the best sport in the world. And if you outwork the next guy, then you will beat him. If you can run longer, if you can, if you're more conditioned or you're in better shape or you just work harder or want it more and you put in more effort and work, you can, then it like even the playing field in life for me, where I was like, oh, all these rich kids and whatever, they're supposed to have all these advantages. But if now the playing field is even, I can outwork them.
Yeah.
That's all I have to do. It doesn't matter where it come from or what doesn't matter that nothing matters. Even if they're more talented, if I just try harder.
Yeah.
Now the playing field is, so I already had that kind of in my mental kind of arsenal. Like I was ready. I showed up ready to suffer. They were not going to run me off with anything. Like I was like, I didn't know what to expect, but I was like, nobody in this, they will literally have to kill me. Like they can't, because I didn't have like a backup plan. Like I said earlier, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to get my degree and then maybe try wrestling. If that doesn't work out, then I'll go be a stockbroker, a real estate investor. Like, no, like this was it. This was going to happen. There was no backup plan. So like, you better believe on like day one, when they're teaching how to do an arm drag or something, like you better believe I'm paying attention. There is no backup plan. This is it. So, and like you initially start with just like, all the conditioning, and then just like you do what's called taking bumps. You learn how to take a bump, which is standard. You run and fall down, and like if you slipped on if you're not a wrestling fan, if you slipped on a banana peel and fell onto your back on the floor,
right?
That sucks. So you learn how to do that, where you kind of distribute your impact evenly, and you do it snap, like with a snappy, crisp execution. And then you do like, and it sucks. It's like basically a mini tiny little car crash. And when your body's not conditioned to it at first, it's like you can't walk for days, because it's like, it's a horrible thing to do to your body. You kind of develop, your body kind of adjusts to it, and you develop kind of a callus to it where it doesn't bother you that much, and you learn how to do it where it's just instinctive, where it's just a movement that your body does to protect itself, where kind of all the impact gets distributed evenly and so forth. That kind of takes years to develop. But at first, there's like 50 bumps in a row, which is exhausting, first of all, and it's painful. And you just basically torture yourself for months and months and months on end. Then you finally get to have a match, and a few basic moves or whatever, and you get it. And then you feel those first, like, the roar of the crowd, even though if it's 20 people the first time or whatever, you kind of feel a little bit of that adrenaline. And you kind of build more and more and more. But it takes a long time to get good, and to get to where like you get in like the zone or the flow, where you're like, oh yeah, like that takes years to get to that. To get to that, it's not like something like basketball you play when you're a little kid,
right?
So if you're like, so you kind of already have, you've been like, you knew how to be in the zone when you were in fourth grade, because you were like schooling dudes in fourth grade. Wrestling, it's like you never tried it before, so it's like it takes and you're like, depending on when you start, so it's like it takes a while to get to that. But then once you do, then it's like you the feeling you get from like wrestling, where it's like the creative satisfaction, the artistic satisfaction, at least when it's at its best, like, for me, when like you took people on the ride and told the story, and you saw them react. It's like I mean, people will have different ways they want to categorize or classify wrestling. Some people will be like, it's sport, it's sports entertainment, and there's all these different styles, and in different parts of the world, the styles and the kind of the fans and the culture is different, and there's a million different kind of interpretations and styles, and it all is great, but it's all different. And some people will say it's sports, some people say entertainment, some people will call it theater, some people will call it like performance art, and then people get mad at those people and be offended that they call it performance art and whatever. And like I don't like any of those labels. I don't think you can label it. To me, it's just wrestling. It's like, I don't know. I don't really know how to. It's wrestling, man. I don't know. Like, to me, it's like it's storytelling, and it's like it's hooking people in and taking them on a little ride. It's entertainment. Yeah. So like when you get that live on pay-per-view or TV or just for the house or whatever, packed arena, 200 people in a VFW hall, whatever it is, when you have this image in your brain, and it's like there's I look at it like a movie a lot of times, like the way a movie director sees the whole story. I see the whole story before I walk in. Like if it's like, okay, and there's a million different stories you could tell, and every story can be different. The story could be big guy versus small guy. The story could be veteran versus rookie. The story could be cheater, evil guy versus courageous, good guy. The story could be two crazy dudes who just want to kill each other. There could be a deeper backstory. This could be a year-long storyline coming to a blow off. This could be a first time ever meeting between two characters and how they get interact when we've seen them on screen for the first time. There's a million different things, but I'll see the whole story in my head before, and I'll imagine, like when I'm imagining what we're going to do, like I don't like I'm not a big like ABC. I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this. I'm more of a I like to keep it open. Like it'd be something like this, and then it's something like this. But I'm imagining how the people are responding.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to give you a hip toss, then a body slam, then I'm going to hit you in the head with a bat, and then you're going to hit me in the head with a bat. And like, it's not like ABC. It's like, then kind of the good guy's doing good for a minute, and then kind of the good guy slips in a banana peel, so to speak. And then the bad guy's doing good, and then people get sad, and then the good guy. Like I think of it in terms of like a story arc, like a TV show or something. Like how I want the fans to be feeling right now. I want them to be sad and hopeful that things will turn around for the guy that they want to win. Or maybe I just want them to be just like shocked, or maybe I want them to be angry or just excited or whatever the feeling I want. That's the way I look at it. So it's like kind of pulling puppeteer strings. And once you figure out how to get that feeling, and you get that feeling all at the same time, mixed with like the feeling of like the way you'd feel after the end of any athletic endeavor or whatever, where you got that kind of physical release, where where you like really put in full maximum effort and you're exhausted and you're sweating and you're bleeding, and like when you can really, when you're at the point where you're like the way you would be in the fourth quarter of a game, where you're like just balls out, not like this is the only thing that exists in the world, diving for loose balls or whatever, or like in football or basketball or whatever, where you're just like fully like reckless abandon with your body, and you've completely exerted all your energy, and you're like that, combined with the artistic satisfaction of taking people on the exact ride, and you saw them go through the emotions exactly as you imagined it in your head. that combination is freaking like, that is it.
Yeah.
That is why I keep coming, but that's why I will do this until my body absolutely refuses to let me do it anymore, because it's like that combination of artistic satisfaction mixed with like that fourth quarter balls out athletic exertion feeling, and then also mixed with when you start throwing in I've been known for a lot of super high risk kind of extreme gnarly things in my career, as far as like death matches and stuff like that, and even the match I had last night, that's a really that's another element that adds to it. That's another addictive element. That's like the same reason people skydive or jump bikes or do anything dangerous, is like that adrenaline junkie feeling of like, this could go really, really, really wrong, and I could get really hurt and I might die.
Right.
But it's going to be really exciting. Like that adrenaline high of the risk of danger mixed with the other two things. So I guess I'm just kind of making this theory up as I'm talking, but I guess it's those three things combined that is like that's it, where it's like, oh, and it's so addictive when you get all three at once, where it's like, we could have died, that could have gone really bad, and I'm bleeding, sweating, I'm exhausted, and they went on the exact ride. They were happy and then sad, and then we hit him with the shock, and then the surprise happened, and then they were like, they didn't see that coming, and you saw them go on the emotional ride exactly as you pictured in your head. That combination of things, like, that's the most addictive cocktail in humanity's history.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine anybody who's never experienced being a professional wrestler at a high level, because you haven't lived life, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure it's, you find the same thing with other endeavors, but for me particularly, like, that's where I get it, where I'm like, and it takes years to get to that, where you're that good and on that, but or even have that opportunity or on the right stage, and everybody's a little different. Everybody has different things they're good at and different ways they do things. Some guys are comedy guys, some guys are straight serious guys, some guys do different stuff, some guys like the talking, some guys like the wrestling, some guys like long matches, some guys like short matches, some guys like death matches, some guys like the flip and fly. Like, it all kind of depends on you too, your particularly who you are and what you bring to the table and what you do best.
You were saying that, like, the idea that you had to wait for this to pay off, I think, is fascinating to me, because, like you said, in basketball or even writing or playing the piano, you get some burst of, oh, this feels really good, but you had to wait till you built up the skill set. You also had to have other people who were good at it in order to sort of get a bunch of people going. So I wonder, and this actually dovetails nicely with a question from Liz T. She wondered, what helps to motivate you on the days when you're just not feeling your best? And I kind of want to add to that by saying, what motivated you in those early days when you didn't yet know how good it could feel, but you were still working at it anyway?
Maybe in the earlier days, it was like, you're trying to get good. So it's like and a lot of that is like a mystery. Like, you're just kind of, it's hard to kind of put into words. You're like, you're trying to figure it out, and every little tiny success is like a big success. And every little new thing that happens that's cool is really exciting. And I guess it would be like that in anything. Like, if you never, I don't know, if you never cooked before, but you cooked something for the first time, and you're like, and it was like a little easy thing, and it was like, oh, this tastes pretty good. Oh, I made a bowl of cereal and I didn't screw this up. Like, maybe I could do something more hard. I don't know, like, anything you could do, there's like any little success you have that's like somewhere going in the direction of what you'd eventually like to achieve, is like a motivating kind of little nibble at success that keeps you going toward that way. Now, like if I'm like, man, I'm having if I'm not like feeling something,
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes I've just like completely gone through the motions. Like when I was in WWE, like I didn't like. I mean, that's why I left. Like I didn't really like the way that I didn't like their storytelling. I just didn't like their product. I didn't like the way they do stuff. Like it's not a. I was over it. Like I didn't like anything that I was doing. Like without getting into it. And anybody who knows anything about me like knows all that. So it's like not a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But I had many days there where like it's pay-per-view or live TV every single week, and it's just like I don't like it became a job. Where like
Mm-hmm.
I don't care one bit whether I rescue the girl off the train tracks or the girl dies or gets ran over by the train, or I don't care if my character dies, or you can just in fact just give me a gun and a bottle of scotch and I'll blow my own brains out. I don't care. Like I do not care
Mm-hmm.
about this story or this product. Like because just the way they do stuff, they're more like you don't have as much personal creative freedom over your own stories. You just kind of like playing a role,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I didn't like any of the stuff, so it just became like a job where I was like, whatever. And then I'm just mentally detached, and then just totally going through the motions, like. But even then, sometimes you can get a little into it. But like, now if I'm like, I will take steps ahead of time to make sure, like, if I'm not feeling it, it'll be because, or if I'm not feeling something long before it happens or becomes a reality or becomes something that I have to go through with, I will have kiboshed it.
Mm-hmm.
So now anything that comes to reality, for the most part, that I'm going to actually participate in, I'm involved in because even if it wasn't my idea, I liked it or I added my own element to it and we had a discussion about it. And I was like, oh, okay, what we could do. And I had a vision about it. And I don't have those days many times now because I've already kind of pictured it in my head and I'm already excited about it by the time it becomes the day of the show now.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm feeling physically terrible, and I'm excited to do this and I want to go out and tell the story and everything, I just like feel terrible and I can't move, and I'm like, that happens. A lot of times just the easiest cure for that, and you can't manufacture it, and it's especially hard during a pandemic where sometimes there's no fans in a building, and we're like every other sport is, we're doing these empty arena stuff, we're
Mm-hmm.
having as many fans. I think we had 1,300 people in the building last night, in a building that could hold like 10,000 at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's not a full house, but it's as many as you can have safely. So you don't. I mean, adrenaline cures everything. Like I've been like I haven't slept and I can't even remember. I don't know what country I'm in. I don't know what time zone I'm in. I've been on the road for 40 days in a row. But then I walk out on live TV in front of 20,000 people and you're, and then the adrenaline just go. Then you're in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's over. Like the adrenaline cures everything. Well, you don't have that, or you're just trying to get into it. Like it's music, listening to music, or just really visual combination of like, I got to move around. I got to start moving. If I can
Mm-hmm.
break a little sweat, whether that's like a little jog or just start moving around or listening to music. And when I get like some blood flow and get like some physical exertion going, usually my brain will start going, and I just have to try to find a way to connect mentally to my vision for what I want to do in the ring later.
Mm-hmm.
And that, a lot of music gets me in the mood sometimes, different styles for different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's different types of music for different stories,
Mm-hmm.
to get into the right headspace,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what the specific story is, but sometimes it's just like something that is nice to get me moving, that just like, if I can get to where like I just, like you have a workout, sometimes you just like you're in the hotel and you feel like terrible and you just want to take a nap. But you go to the hotel gym and just do a little bit of cardio, and all of a sudden you're now my energy's up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So
It's like that.
yeah,
Like sometimes it's just like I just gotta get physically moving and get some music and then whatever. And I just gotta mentally connect to what I want to like accomplish. And I want to become that person. Like how you in a movie or a TV show, like you become the character before you walk onto the screen. You gotta like get into the headspace in the zone of like who you're gonna be on camera, like before you ever go to the ring.
mm-hmm.
Like I gotta like feel it and visualize it, and I gotta get moving, get some blood flow. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. 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 And I think that's the interesting thing is that talking to you about this, about professional wrestling, right? It might seem to people like, well, yeah, that's true about professional wrestling, but how can it apply to me? And I think that's the truth when it's, I got to send a bunch of emails. It's figuring out like, how do you just kind of trick yourself into getting a little start at it, right? It's the same sort of thing. John, I know you need to go recover. I'm going to ask you one more question because it came from Crystal Ritchie, and I like this question in general. She wonders what you would tell your 16-year-old self that was out there kind of wandering if you could go back now.
oh man, that's tough because, like I said earlier, like I mean, I would love to tell him like, yo, don't do drugs.
Except that
You
maybe
know,
doing drugs is the path that, like, you have a path,
that's
right?
that's what I'm saying. It's like time travel, like
Mm-hmm.
in Family Guy when like Stewie and Brian go back and they kill a cockroach and then it ruins the entire timeline and they come back and everybody has three heads. I'm like, man, there's a bunch of stuff I would love to tell myself not to do,
Mm-hmm.
but what if that ruined the whole timeline? And like, I don't, I wouldn't trade anything for where I'm sitting at in life right now. I'm the luckiest person in the world. I have a beautiful wife. I have a kid on the way. I get to do what I love to do for a living. I don't have to go to a real job on Monday. Like I have no complaints. Like everything is perfect. So like if I went back and changed it in any way, would that somehow screw up the whole timeline? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That
Yeah.
being said, there's a bunch of you know, bunch of stuff that was unpleasant that I'd like to not have to go through, or whatever. But you also learn from that stuff. So it's like, you're never gonna get you're never just gonna get a completely scot-free, like nothing bad ever happened, never went through any rough patches life.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you're going through challenges, just know that like, oh, this is just like, it's like a wrestling match, like, on a standard house show or whatever. Just in theory, I'd go out there against the bad guy because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a friggin' national treasure, so I'm always the good guy, and that, I'd be doing good for a minute, and then the bad guy would, you know, do some dastardly tactics, and like somebody would distract the ref and they'd hit me in the head with a wrench, and then I'd fall down, and then all of a sudden I'm not doing so good anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a few minutes, I'd be getting the shit kicked out of me. The bad guy would be beating me up, and the crowd's all sad, and he's loving it. He's flexing his muscles or whatever, and he's kicking me in the ribs, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And then eventually, the bad guy will then, for whatever reason, get too big for his britches and attempt to run and smash me in the corner, and I will definitely move at the last second, and he'll crash and burn, and he'll eat shit in the corner, and then now I have an opening, and now all of a sudden things start looking good again, and now the whole tide of things have changed. Like that's like a metaphor for life, like when you're getting the shit kicked out of you for a little bit, you lost your job, some 2020 shit went down, whatever's going on, things just aren't going good. It's just, all we're doing is just riling the crowd up, getting them set up for the big comeback. Think of it like that. Now I'm philosophizing.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it.
If you're getting the shit kicked out of you, you're just building heat. You're just building heat with the audience.
That's
you're just peaking.
That could be the title of your book.
Hey, you're just peaking the moment for when you start your comeback, because you're always going to have a comeback,
Yeah. John, thank you so much for taking this time.
Oh, no problem, man.
I appreciate getting to to pick your brain. It made me feel better about some of the things that I used to go through, and I hope that it helps some people think about their stuff.
Yeah, totally, man. No problem at all.
All right, thanks, brother.
I'll catch up with you.
All right, bye.